According to Tom Rainer, 6% of churches in America are effective in evangelism. Let's change the statistic.
Welcome to GoCast, a podcast designed to inspire and equip pastors and leaders to lead soul-winning churches. We have a mission to go and make disciples. This is GoCast.
Hey everyone, welcome to GoCast. I'm your host, Kelly Stickle, joined as always by my friend and co-host, Tim Tribble. Tim, this is the last episode.
This is it.
Of season 1 of GoCast. So, big question for you. I know there's lots of episodes throughout the season, but is there one that stood out to you that, was maybe your favorite?
There was so many good insights throughout all these different interviews, and I love just the diversity of the people that we interviewed. But if I had to pull from one, I would say it would be the episode with Danny Green, as he talks about his 15-year transition with his father. That it wrecks me to think of how much commitment you would need for that, how much determination, how much direction, and just firming your wheels for where you're headed in that sense. Like that shows to me that like they really thought it through and they really cared about their people in the congregation. They didn't want to do a sloppy handoff. So
yeah, that is actually, we did 2 episodes with Pastor Danny and then one with his son Nathan, and that was the transition. 15-year transition one. That one, I took that and began meditating on that and working through a plan and thinking, man, how do you do this? And started working this through and going, man, I got to go back and watch that one again because there's so much that we can learn and in that vision. So many good episodes, so many great conversations, so many keys and tips and ways to grow the church, reach the lost, expand ministries. And all throughout this year, it's been amazing. Then we had COVID hit and everything's kind of changed. We're excited to get into season 2, where we're going to be interviewing pastors and leaders, navigating through COVID, but also what the church is going to look like post-COVID. And we can't wait to start that March 1st. It's coming right away. We're excited about that. But before we do, we're going to get right into a conversation with Pastor Jason Parrish, who pastors a church called The Well in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is the Mormon capital of the world. And it is not the easiest city to plant a Christian church in. And yet not only did they follow the call of God, even though they were on staff with and working with Hillsong Phoenix and had seemingly great positions moving forward, but they felt called to plant a church, Salt Lake City. And not only did they plant it, but they've been very successful growing great guns and doing really, really well. And there's so much in this conversation that you're going to love. So let's go right now to my conversation with Pastor Jason. Well, hey, Jason, welcome to GoCast. It's so good to see you, my friend. So great to have you on the program.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be able to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and in particular, how you got started in ministry.
Yeah. So I'm a Navy brat, bounced around a lot. My dad was stationed in California, Hawaii, back into California. And then his last station before he retired and after my parents divorced was in the Seattle area. In my younger years, we pretty much called Seattle home. My younger years, that's where my wife was born and raised. We grew up in a small little church there, where ministry was missions trips and youth group and all that different stuff. And then when I graduated high school, I took off to Hillsong College in Australia and was there for my college years, came back to the Seattle area. Was a part of our youth ministry there for about another year. My wife and I got married, and this is the really quick version of life and ministry. After we got married, we took off to Phoenix, and we were on staff at a church there, Terry and Judith Christ, which is now Hillsong Phoenix. And we were there for about 6 years before, in 2012, going into 2013. We really felt God leading us to the Salt Lake area to plant what is now known as The Well. And so that's awesome. That's like a little snippet of how ministry went. And somewhere in there, we had kids, 3 beautiful kiddos that we've got, and and just doing life and loving it. So that's kind of where we're at, who we are in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So talk to us about the church you planted, the Well in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's quite the adventure, I am sure.
Yeah, it's been a crazy adventure. So my family comes from a Mormon background. My dad was born and raised that way. We weren't ever really engaged in it, but when my parents divorced and he retired from the Navy, he came back to Salt Lake. And so I probably would have been about 9 years old or so. So from about 9 years old on, it was summers with my dad and every other Christmas, skiing, so on and so forth. And in that period of time, we fell in love with Utah. But by and large, during those moments and just kind of falling in love with this place, during our years in Phoenix, we knew that church planting was going to be a part of our journey. And so it was really cool when we really felt like God was leading us to the place that we loved. And where we felt like we could do life for the long term. And that place was Utah. And so it's an interesting place. It's every area that you plant a church in is hard. Like planting a church is hard. I would never argue that. We just have some very unique nuances to our state and to the mission field that we're a part of. We usually liken it to if you were to go to like a third world country or a country that has an established religion. And to do ministry there and to engage people with the gospel.
Yeah, that's really that's really neat. So talk to us about the church. I mean, when you planted the church, got the church started, I mean, did everything just kind of boom right off the bat, or how was the church?
Yeah, no, I'm an awesome leader, so I was able to successfully just build it down to really small numbers. I remember one weekend we were sitting in an 800-seat auditorium with about 60 adults in there.
Wow.
And with no pipe and drape and nothing to make it look spectacular. And it was in that moment that I felt like extreme peace. We were still in the right place. I think the thing that's always kind of settled our hearts is that we'll die here. We love it here. This is home for us. This is not a stepping stone. It's not a place where we're like, hey, we'll come, we'll build a church, see what happens, and if it doesn't work out, we'll leave. Like, you couldn't get me anywhere else. We absolutely love it here. And I think it was that reality that just kept us plugging away. By about year 4, fast forward is when we really started to see things start tracking. And I think here in Utah, if I could speak to planning our church, it hasn't been a product of flashiness or really sexy ministry or anything like that. It's been a product of building trust and legitimacy with our neighbors. And that's been the route that we've gone, which is, do people trust us? Is what we're doing legitimate? Does it have character? Does it have integrity? Does it have consistency? And I feel like year 4 was when we like crossed a threshold in that. Like we stepped over a line where all of a sudden it was like people started really inviting their neighbors and their friends and loved ones in their world. And it was almost like, okay, you're here. We're going to trust you with our lives now. And from about year 4 till now, we'll turn 7 in February. It's been a whole different game. We've seen our largest amount of growth. We're about 5 months into a second campus in a different part of the city, and that's all happened from about year 4 to we're 6.5 years old now. So about 2.5 years, it's been hyper.
That is so good. That's awesome. I love that because I mean that's the case in a lot of places, but especially in a place like Salt Lake City with established. Utah, famous for the Mormons and all the rest of it's going on, and building that trust. I mean, it does take a call of God to be able to push through some of those lean times to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I love the vision of your church. I mean, you say we're building a house that welcomes the least and the lost. So I mean, you're obviously outsider focused and a soul winning church. So what in particular drives that passion in you and for you? Yeah.
I think for us, we never wanted to build a bless me club and an insider focused church. So when we got here, especially there was a really strong conviction in our hearts. Like we joined, my wife and I love CrossFit. So we joined a CrossFit gym and really started to build relationships with there. Many of those relationships we still have today.
Yeah.
We've always said like we don't want to build I call it a programmatic church, where everything is focused around programs. So even now, almost 7 years in, we are very lean and mean. We don't do a ton of stuff. We have our Sunday morning services, and we have our table groups, or table groups is our name for small groups.
Yeah.
And that's honestly really it. Like, we don't do a ton of stuff because our sole focus is to be a church where people live their faith outside of the four walls of the church.
So good.
Talk a lot on Sundays about how church on Sunday is really just a rally. It's a moment where we come together for about an hour and 15 minutes and get encouraged, worship together, have a small family reunion, and then we go back out and do church, do life, do faith in the areas that God's called us to, and because that's where we spend our time. And so we often tell people that like their cubicle is their pulpit, their workplace is their pulpit, their school is their pulpit, their shopping mall or their coffee shop or any one of those places is their pulpit. And that's where we get to do the greatest degree of work for the gospel. And so we just try to always really keep people outwardly focused. And at the end of the day, build a church then when friends are being invited and people that are coming from maybe non-faith backgrounds, Mormon backgrounds, secular backgrounds is actually an easy leap. And it tends to segue really well.
That's really cool. I love that because the natural gravitational pull, I think it's Andy Stanley that said it, the natural gravitational pull of every church is to be insider focused. So I love the fact that you're constantly leading your people to use their workplace, their home, their neighborhood as a pulpit to keep that focus always outside. I love that. Now let's talk about salvations, baptisms, all the rest of it. So how many salvations, for instance, did you guys have last year?
Last year we would have been just about over 300 last year.
Wow.
And this year, at least where we're at, I think we're in the 240s to 260s. I don't have an exact number yet, but that's only really been, if I'm honest, like I said, the past few years we've seen numbers like that, but we've also grown by that amount as well, which has been crazy.
That is awesome.
Honest and super candid, those first couple of years, we didn't see things like that. It was, like I said, about year 3.5, 4 that we really started to move in the direction of seeing people who were coming to our church that weren't like just church hopping or, things like that. Like real people who were like, man, they're coming from all kinds of different backgrounds and places and spaces in life. Really saying yes to Jesus and walking it out. So
that's so good.
That's a new reality for us, honestly. So it hasn't always been like that. I don't want to present a picture that's not true. That's probably been over the past few years. And again, I go back to that time stamp of about year 4 when I feel like we crossed the threshold of trust and legitimacy as a church.
Okay, let's pull into that because I think that's really good because I think there's pastors that are saying, well, I'd love to see those kind of numbers, in salvations, but I'm not seeing that. I'm pushing it. I'm preaching it. I'm wanting to do that. But you're saying, that didn't track. So talk about, those 4 years in getting traction. You never lost focus on that and never changed your vision. You just kept at it. But what was it? Do you think that was it just time? Was it trust? What was it that a focus in you? What was it that kind of broke through? And what was that ceiling to break through? And what would you encourage a pastor who's saying, I'm trying to break through that?
Yeah, I think what we can do sometimes is I think we set up systems that are that really discourage pastors and leaders and cause us to go like very, very focused in on like, okay, I've got to grow something to large numbers and I got to have lots of salvations in order for it to be successful.
Right.
Failing to realize that there's so many more things that go into building something that's going to be here in 20 years.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, like we stepped back and we said as a church, like, okay, we may not see our greatest days of ministry in the beginning, and we're okay with that because we're building something. That's like starting a company and going like, we're going to be a $1 billion company in the first 4 weeks of building this thing. Said no one ever. It's not like it's not going to work that way.
Yeah.
So we took a different approach and we said, okay, people will give us their lives. And they will trust us if we do some things over time. And that is show to be a church of character,
Yeah.
show to be a church of integrity, and show to be a church of consistency. Will we be here when it's not doing what we want it to, or doesn't look the way that we want it to, or feel the way that we want it to? Will we still be here? Will we stay here when it's awkward and hard and we don't have all the leaders we want, we don't have all the resources that we want, and all these different things? Are we still going to love people no matter what? And so for us, we really worked on that idea of trust and legitimacy, which is built through character, integrity, and consistency. Those first 4 years, that was a really big deal for us. And that fleshed itself in all kinds of ways. That fleshed itself out practically with the type of, like, being in a permanent location. We were portable for the first 9 months, and I knew for us to gain some traction and trust and legitimacy, we had to put roots down.
Right.
And my wife and I, buying a house, not being seemingly mobile as well. People look at those things. Are they here, or are they halfway here and they'll jump if it's not working the way that they want it to, type of deal?
Right.
People see that stuff out. They're smart, especially in the world that we live in right now. You know what I mean? They're constantly looking at those things. So we made very, very succinct and directed decisions about showing roots being planted. Our kids are in school here. We love this place. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here in 20 years. And I'd even make statements like, if this thing were to burn down tomorrow, we'd still be able to get a coffee. So that it was things like that. It was languaging. We put a lot of handles on the idea of we will be here long term, and we're not going anywhere. And I think that helped build it, but that took time.
That's so good. And I love that perspective, because that's unique perspective on that, and saying how important some of those little things are to building the trust to get the traction that you need. But I think that's also very, very key for religious type areas like you're in, because a lot of people come in and the excuse automatically is, well, it's too hard here. And so I'm sure that a lot of people watching your church have seen multiple examples of people that came in, didn't have that attitude like you had, tried, and they're just waiting to say, we're going to wait for a couple of years to see if this guy's for real.
Right. And I don't know, do you work out? Yeah. So you've probably heard this terminology before, and it's something that I'm even studying now as I'm doing more and more working out, is time under tension.
So you can't tell?
No, I now.
No, just kidding.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But there's this terminology that's used, time under tension, right? That muscle is actually built, size is actually built,
right?
Not by like just throwing reps as fast as you can, but actually time under tension, like slowing down, actually using less weight at times, and doing proper reps. And I've just found that for us, it's been time under tension, that our the strongest degree of who we are has been built in slow, purposeful, succinct movements that we didn't throw a ton of activity at it. We didn't throw a ton of resource at it. It was just time under tension. And now we're starting to see the product of that time under tension, being, 6.5 years, 7 years in. And, listen, you can start feeling the effects of working out 6 weeks in, but I don't think you really start seeing the effects until you've spent more time under tension. And all of a sudden you look back in a year, you look back in 2 years, and you go, whoa, I look way different than I did 2 years ago. And I think church planting, at the end of the day, seeing lives transformed through the ministry of our churches, happens more in time under tension than it does in fast, quick.
That's so good.
So
that's so good. So let's talk about strategy. I mean, because there's got to be consistency in strategy in doing that. So what has been the most effective strategy as a church for winning souls that you've been consistent with and stuck through, that you're starting to see the fruit of now?
Yeah, I think for us, we've really worked hard at building a place of authenticity. And I know that's a pop term for all of us. We want to be authentic, and we want to be real. We want to be relevant. We say all these different things. We have found that, especially with the context of our state, the nuance that we deal with here is that the LDS Church is very guarded in who they are as people.
Right.
It's very much about keeping an image and looking perfect, and there's this very strong veneer, which is, I mean, that's not abnormal in life. I mean, we do that within Christian communities and in the whole 9 yards. So we've worked really hard as a church to almost like, I would call it almost a rebellion to that.
Yeah.
That we allow things to be a little bit messier. We allow church to be a little bit messier. And then we throw, like, if you look at our whole vision statement, it's all about messiness.
Yeah.
Saying we're going to be a church that's okay with messiness. It's okay to not be okay. And no matter where you're coming from and no matter what's going on. And so all of our teams, everything that we do, everything that we talk about from the pulpit, all those different things, the strategy has been, how do we put words to that? How do we put action to that? And how do we make it so that people actually feel that versus it just being a pithy statement that we make from the pulpit on Sundays?
That is so good. And that resonates with me hugely, because where we are in Lethbridge, and we are in a very strong LDS community as well, very religious, established community as well. And so a lot of our vision stuff has been built around the exact same thing, is about being messy and being authentic and all, because that really is against the rebellion of the people who got rejected or aren't in there or are tired of the facade, and in reaching them. So that's really studying your community, the needs in your community, and then ministering to where they are at, which is that's brilliant.
And talking about things that in a religious circle, whether it be LDS or, in religious Christian circles,
Yep.
I think so often we tiptoe around things. And I'm not even just talking about hot button topics. I'm just saying the way that we feel about stuff.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, the duality of our thought processes as people. I mean, let's be really, really truthful about it. We are faith-filled people, but come on, we've got doubts. And they're often up here at the same time. And when you put words to that for people, all of a sudden it let like people's guards come down, because they're like, whoa, wait a second. I'm not used to hearing a leader. I'm not used to hearing a pastor like play with the duality of what's going on internally.
Right.
They think that we don't have duality happening. And I heard one time a good quote, and I'm paraphrasing the quote, but it's the idea that maturity is the ability to hold two opposing thoughts in our minds without allowing it to rip us apart. And I think as we grow in our faith and we grow in the maturity of our faith, we can actually teach people, like, listen, Jesus is our constant. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. But if we're very honest, there's a lot of crazy that's happening in here at times.
Yeah.
It's not giving up on our theology. It's not giving up on our doctrine. It's just simply saying, this is my humanity. And we're okay with our humanity working through things in the context of community. And as we've talked that out, as we've fleshed that out for people in our church, that's where we've seen, especially people who come from a secular background, non-faith background, really love and begin to love this place that we call home.
That's awesome. So talk to me about somebody who came into your church, completely unchurched background, not somebody you'd expect to walk through the doors, but came in there and gave their heart to Jesus. Their life has been radically transformed. They became born again.
One of the freshest ones is a guy who's actually on our security team now. He just hopped onto our security team. He is a police officer around here. Him and his wife went through some pretty hard moments in their marriage and all kinds of different things. Somebody invited him to church. Actually, our campus pastor is a firefighter as well, and so obviously they mix firefighters, police department. Yeah. So he invited him to church. He came to our church, and just got radically saved. It was just awesome. He gave his life to Jesus, and it was one of those ones. He put up his hand during the service, filled out a card, started going through the process. And then I got to baptize him, and just the whole thing, and watching his life transform and come to the place where he's like, one of the reasons that he stayed at our church, one of the reasons that he came into our church and was able to really really step into that place where I'm going to say yes to Jesus, I believe in Jesus, is because of that. He's like, I literally came here and I was like, wow, I'm completely jacked up and they're okay with it. And that was the idea that really started this. That was the inception of his faith. And then his faith grew and grew and grew to the point where he's able to say yes to Jesus. And in saying yes to Jesus, we've now been walking out this process with him and his wife, and it's been unbelievable to watch. And that's a fresh one, and there's countless more people coming from LDS backgrounds and everything in between. So it's been a fun journey, but that's like one of the freshest ones.
That's so cool.
Somebody who I'm in relationship with and get to talk to on a regular basis.
Well, I mean, it's stories like that just make us, it warms our hearts and going, that's why we do what we do. I mean, that makes it all worthwhile, going through all the pain, going through the struggles of church planting. That's exactly why we do it. So that is awesome.
Yeah. And they're talking about now, like, I've been able to pray over them multiple times. They came up on a year since some of their biggest issues in their marriage, and they're like, man, it's been radical what God has done in our life in this past year, just simply with the decision. And that, again, that's not us Bible beating people. That's not us talking big theology.
Yeah.
That's helping people. That's creating a space and a place where there's authentic community. That we all understand that we are humans and our humanity is at work, but Jesus is greater. And in that space, you see life change.
That is true. That's so awesome. Man, okay, so there's a statement on your website that reads that church was never meant to reside within the four walls of the building, so we're taking it to the streets. We don't just point out the problem, we help fix them. We want to bring hope to our city, life to our city, help to our city, and change to our city. Man, I was like, I'm going to steal that or something. I don't know. I was ready to jump up and down and be a part of Well Church. Let's go do this. So talk to me about what you guys do to bring hope to the city, to get outside your four walls.
Yeah. So we're doing a lot of stuff right now. And I say a lot of stuff. It's very pointed stuff. So a lot of it is just being in our community with our serve days. We have a constant flow of serve opportunities that people can get involved in. One of the cool things that our church is doing right now is working with an organization called Care Portal, which is they're working with DFCS, I think is how DSF, and the department that works with like foster kids and everything like that. And so our church is one of the first churches to be able to be a part of this in our valley, which is when there's stuff that people need, families that need things for foster kids, whatever it may be, whether it's beds, car seats, everything like that, through some of our online stuff that we have going on through our church, we're able to push out notifications to people in our church, and our church can rally in real time, which is really cool because it makes helping our city and engaging in our city not something that is, once again, a program, but it's more of a response.
Right.
And it's real time. And so it's things like that. One of the big things that we're working on right now, which is going to be our biggest maneuver as a church, is we're getting ready to launch a thing called Redemption House. And Redemption House is going to be a transitional living home for women who are coming out of trafficking.
Wow.
This is an initiative of our church that we're currently in the throes of building. And our hope, we have a big issue with that. I mean, all across the United States, but especially in our area, we actually, funny enough, because of the thoroughfare, the main freeway that runs through, trafficking is a big issue here. And so no one's really getting involved with it on at a systemic level. So we decided as a church, this is what we're going to put our resource behind. This is what we're going to put our people behind. And really what it's going to do is our goal is to own homes all across our valley where we are helping those women and kids who are being rescued out of sex trafficking find a place. It'll be a year-long Jesus-oriented program that these women and kids can go through and then graduate from, and then hopefully the cycle continues, and who knows what it grows into. But right now we were like, hey, if we can transform the lives of 4 women in a house, then it's worth it. And if it grows to 8, then great. If it grows to 12, then great. And we'll just keep on going. We'll see where God takes it. But that's going to be the big thing. And again, that's where we talk about getting our hands dirty, getting involved in segments of our society that typically the church kind of tries to stay away from because we don't like how it feels or how it looks.
That is so powerful. I mean, I understand now why our wives connected so much because I get it now because my wife is runs an organization called Not for Sale, which is rescuing kids in Mexico out of sex trafficking and different things, and we're doing a lot of that stuff around here as well, which is really cool. That's really powerful. So, but that's not a small undertaking. I mean, that's a major. I mean, to get houses, it's not a cheap undertaking. It's not an easy undertaking to get. I mean, rescuing that's a big deal. So, why do you believe it's so important then for the church to take on projects like that and get outside the four walls?
I think so many times what we do is I love the church. I'm a local church fan. But I think so many times what we can do is, we get behind wheels that are already turning, and we need to do that. You know what I mean? I look at some of the initiatives in our city that we support financially and things like that, and we send people to, and they're all amazing. They're all amazing things, and in many ways, our church. I think so often we can take resource, and it's like we're going to put $1 in 1,000 places versus put $1,000 in one place.
Right.
And so for me, I've always been, and for us as a leadership team and as a church, we've always been very, 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 very careful not to try to do a bunch of little things, but to really figure out where it is that we want to put our energy and our effort. And I think churches, the more that we double down on that reality, we can become a spearhead in different things. Yeah. And I think that's why we've got to transform our idea in the local church. And I think for so long, what we've done is we all try to look the same and be the same and behave the same and do the same things. And I think in doing that, we're missing the pointedness that each local church potentially has that is a part of the fingerprint that God has for them. And I think many times we can miss being who God's called us to be as we try to be like every other church. And we just said, like, listen, this is who we're going to be. And we know that this is what's on us as a church, so we're going to put our resource here. We're going to put our energy, our time, our effort, our staffing. Like, this is what we're going to do. And that means that we're probably not doing other things. And we're okay with that. Because what we're saying, we're going to say no to a lot of other things so that our yes can be very, very pointed and very, very purposeful.
That's so good. I know that's going to resonate with a lot of pastors and leaders. So what advice would you give to them, to a pastor who wants to activate their church to minister to needs in the communities and get outside the four walls?
Yeah, I think my advice is take it slow. My advice is to pull back a little bit, and instead of just jumping into activity for the sake of activity, and I think sometimes we do that to keep people interested. Work with people to help them understand and know, like, we're going somewhere, especially young churches. You know what I mean? I know that your guys' church is more seasoned. Ours is becoming more seasoned. So resource and ability now grows. Yeah. But especially in those formative years and in the younger years, church planners especially, I watch so many guys try to do 1,000,001 things. And it's like, you're spreading what's already thin resource out a lot. If you could just come back a little bit and take time to go, God, like, who is it that you've really called us to be? And allow that to be part of the journey. You know what I mean? Allow that to be. I mean, we're doing that with our kids right now. My kids don't get to do 4 different sports. They get to try a sport, stay in the sport, see if they like the sport. And if they don't like the sport, the next year we'll do something else. Right. Instead of, we're going to do 18 different sports, different things right now in a blanket year and hope that one sticks. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. And so we kind of treated our church like that. It's like, okay, it's a baby right now. It's a toddler right now. It's a 4-year-old right now. It's a 6-year-old. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see, okay, it's gaining strength and muscle in different areas. And we've found the lane that we want to run in. And so we're going to run hard in that lane. We're going to train for that lane. We're going to resource that lane. That would be my encouragement to pastors and leaders is go, like, maybe just step back a little bit and go, God, who have you really called us to be? And what does that look like for us? What is our unique fingerprint?
That's so good. All right, so tie together for us this idea of getting outside the four walls and getting the community and serving and finding that lane and running it, and tie that together for us of that focus and the effect that has on soul winning in your church.
Right. I think the more that we can make serving outside of the four walls of our church and engaging people a natural reality for our church people, That's what makes our church something that is very inviting to people who are outside of the four walls of our church, to people who don't have a faith background. I think if we're not careful, we can make people a program instead of our passion. And once again, I'm the guy who thinks that people are smart and they see what they see. And so as a pastor and leader, I go, okay, if I would feel that way, they definitely feel that way. Right. And so for us, it's been trying to teach our church and engage our church in the mindset that people are not a program, people is our passion. And we love people because we've first been loved. And in that vein, that's when we really started people seeing that goes back to that authenticity thing, where people are coming in and they're going like, man, you guys didn't have to do that.
Right.
That felt real. It felt authentic. You guys just genuinely loved, you gave, you served, you did, just out of the goodness of your heart or the passion of your heart. And so for me, the more that we can do and teach our people to, that's why we try not to make it a program.
Right.
That's why we try to make it like, hey, respond to people respond to your neighbors. Yeah, we're going to go feed the poor. Yeah, we're going to do things like that. But at the end of the day, we should respond to our neighbors. We should respond to our work, like the people we work with. That is our mission field. And realizing that at the end of the day, it's not always the poor and the homeless and the hungry. We have those people in our society. We have those people in our state. We have those people in our city for sure. And we serve them. They are the least of these in many ways, in the sense that they don't have much. And so we want to provide the best that we can. But I think many times in doing that, we fail to realize that our mission field really is how we respond to the person that we think is a jerk next to us, in the cubicle next door, or that boss we don't like, or the people we go to school with, or the people that we engage with at coffee shops. That is our mission field as well. It's both and. So
that's so good.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at and how we kind of trained our people and taught our people through the vehicle of authenticity.
That is awesome, man. This has been so good. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
I don't know. Oh man, those are all great questions, man. I love the heart behind what it is that you're trying to accomplish and do, and I think more conversations like this are going to enable all of us as leaders to get better handles on how we help people, how we serve our cities, and how we build our churches. And I think it's changing. I think things are changing right now. And I think conversations like this are important. So, man, I'm high-fiving you from the other side of the screen. I'm pumped to see where these conversations that you're leading take people and encourage leaders.
Yeah, I'm really sensing. I really appreciate that, because I'm really sensing the urgency of the times. That as a church, I don't know, we need to have these conversations. We need to help one another. I think every pastor I've talked to is saying, "Man, yeah, we're doing good, but man, we feel like we could be doing so much better." And I think all of us feel that, and I think there's just a sense of something big, something unique coming to the Big C Church. So we need to be talking across whatever boundaries we need to cross to be able to have the conversation as the global church to see what God can do.
I think for me, if I could say this and add this last bit to wrap everything else that we've talked about into one kind of thought, I think we're shifting from what it looks like as a church to be program-based to what it looks like to foster the identity and personality of our church. You and I, as fathers and as parents, we're trying to allow our kids the space, but teach and guide them to become who they are. And there's this personality that's part of them, right? And I think that's how we're starting to kind of lead our church is I think that God's got a personality for each local church. Yeah, we're all part of the Big C Church, but if you look at the space of the local church across the nation, across the nations, everyone, your guys' church has a different personality than our church.
Yeah.
And in that, our job as leaders is to identify what that is and then foster it, make it like mold it, train it in the way that it should go, and it doesn't depart from it.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we can do that, the more that we are and will become an authentic church. And in that, that's when people who come from non-faith backgrounds, secular ways of doing life, I really do believe that's where they really start to see and find Jesus in that. That is our outreach model, is becoming authentic in who we are, and it changing from this kind of rigid program-based reality to like, this is who we are as a church, and this is the thumbprint that Jesus has put on us. So
that's so good. Man, I love that. Where can our listeners, I know there's pastors that are saying, man, I want to learn more about you, about your church and what's going on. So where can our listeners connect with you online?
Yeah, I think the best way to get a hold of me is via Instagram. If you just drop a DM in there, we will get connected for sure. I'm always up for good conversations and learning from each other. So that, or hop on our website, shoot me an email, and we can get connected that way as well.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much, Jason. This has been so good. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and thanks for doing the show, man.
Well, thank you so much. It's seriously an honor to be able to be on here with you, and I appreciate you and everything that you're doing. I think this is going to be a really, really cool thing for people to grab a hold of.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. What a great conversation with Pastor Jason. So many good things in there. I love the whole idea of it's okay. We're going to be the church, and we're okay with messiness, and authenticity is such a big thing. What was one thing that stood out to you?
I can't just give you one. I have to do two. So the first one was when him and his wife were just standing on stage with 60 people in the crowd in an 800-seat auditorium, and him just being affirmed by God, like, this is where we are, this is where we're staying, and we're settling our roots here.
I think there's a lot of pastors in COVID times and all the restrictions that are going on that either can't meet right now or are in large auditoriums or larger auditoriums and seeing a handful of people. And so I think that's encouragement for all of us right now to go, there's something more to ministry than full auditoriums. And it's all about, again, it comes down to the individual. So that's really good. Okay, your second takeaway.
Yeah, so the second one was a quote he said where he says, maturity is the ability to hold two opposing thoughts in your mind at the same time without letting it rip you apart. And I just thought that's just, we're so often caught either in the tension of holding two opposing views. Sometimes we as Christians can't even sit down with an opposing view or someone from another religion without having a conversation and handling it properly. So I think that was a...
So what he's saying is that today, especially on Facebook, there's a lot of immaturity.
Yes. My goodness. My goodness.
Because we live in a very divided world, and there's lots of opposing views, and people are seemingly more bold about opposing everyone else's views on that. But I love that. Yeah, maturity is being able to hold two opposing views and not letting rip you apart. And that's so good. Well, we want to continue the conversation. GoCast is not just a podcast of information getting to you. We really want GoCast, and our vision for this is to have a conversation with pastors, leaders all around the world to further the church in leading our churches, learn from each other. So we want to learn from you as much as you are learning from us. Probably more. We want to learn from you. So we want to encourage you to engage in conversation with us. And you can do that on social media by finding us where, Tim?
For sure. On Facebook, Instagram, you can go to our website at www.gocast.ca, or you can find our podcast on any of the major podcast playing platforms.
Yeah. And again, don't just listen. Engage in conversation. We want to talk with you, hear from you, and learn from you. Well, we have next week, we're so excited. We get to start season 2, and we are excited about this conversation. We kind of hesitated trying to figure out because of the uncertainty of COVID and what was happening. And we are hopefully getting toward the end of this whole thing. But really, if there's one thing that COVID has taught me and that I've been observing in conversations I've had with pastors all around the world, is that we're not going to go back to what was before.
No.
That there is something that has fundamentally changed. I think lots has changed in the world. Lots has changed in the church, and the church is going to look different, and is looking different now, but it's going to look different post-COVID as well. And so what is it going to look like, and how do we navigate that? Well, we're going to ask those questions to many great leaders that are leading great churches. Great leaders have great insight, and we're going to find out from them how the church is going to look and how we navigate the future moving forward. You're not going to want to miss that. So join us March 1st for GoCast Season 2. Thank you so much for joining us in Season 1. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of GoCast. We hope you feel inspired and better equipped to take your community for Christ. Make sure to subscribe to receive each new episode as it's released. Let's go and break the stat together.